Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Jackie Woodside again, here with the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. What a monumental task, isn't it? To stand here and say that my commitment is to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. When we're living in, may you live in interesting times. It's an old Chinese proverb. And that's where we find ourselves these days, isn't it? We're living in interesting times. And today on the Conscious Living Podcast, I'm really excited and grateful to bring someone to the show, a colleague and a friend who I met in San Francisco a little while ago, and we connected, and I'm just really, we've been trying for months to schedule a time that we could get together and do the show. Let me tell you about my friend and colleague, Miranda Macpherson. She's a spiritual teacher, author, and interfaith minister who shares a feminine approach to surrender. She teaches a practice called Ego Relaxation, which we're going to get into a little bit today, and bringing together this notion of ego relaxation with the challenges that we are facing in contemporary world today. Her wisdom and palpable transmission invite others to deepen spiritually and become, I love this, more graceful human beings in our world. She's the founder of the OneSpirit Interfaith Foundation in London, where she has trained over 600 ministers and counselors. And today she leads the Living Grace Global Sangha and leads retreats internationally and online. Her book, where'd it go? Her book, The Way of Grace, Transforming Power of the Ego, Boundless Love, and Cultivating Grace card deck, and the mantra album, Streams of Grace. She's got just a beautiful, beautiful body of work, unapologetically feminine, joyful, and down to earth in her way of being. So Miranda, thank you so much for being with us. You do have a beautiful body of work. You gave me one of your card decks when we met as a gift.
Right.
It came to be in our upcoming film, The Frequency of Miracles. We'll plug that as well. And I use it. It's right next to where I have my morning quiet time in spiritual practice.
I'm so glad. That's exactly why I created it, because I know that everyone is so busy these days, myself included, busier than is actually very good for us often. Yes. But, we need to find ways to plug back into the mains. And I created these little bite-sized decks, in a way that I hope, allows us over morning coffee or just to take a moment and take a practice and let it take you deep, even though we might not have a lot of time. So it makes me happy to hear you've been playing with.
Yeah, I have been. And they're beautiful as well, beautifully designed. So, the words are inspiring and the images are just eye candy. So I appreciate that. And why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey, how you came to be the incredible, minister and spiritual teacher that you are, the accent where the not American voice is from.
I don't have an accent. Everyone else
have the accent. Right.
So I'll just, I know that it's distracting. So people.
No, it's beautiful.
Well, I'm originally Australian. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia. And I left my native home for the UK when I was 21 years old. And I lived in the United Kingdom for 15 years and had a very substantial life there. And at that time in my life, for a good decade, I was founding and spiritual director of a groundbreaking interfaith seminary. There was no such thing as any kind of interfaith seminary outside of the United States until I founded OneSpirit, and it now runs in the very good hands of the next generation of beings.
Yeah, I know the seminary, the OneSpirit, sure.
Yeah, the sister school that's based in New York City. Yeah.
Anyway,
so I came to the United States in 2007 on guidance, not really knowing anyone. And after a huge spiritual awakening that happened in India, that really kind of undid all of my constructs about God, who I was, what the spiritual path was. And out of that really powerful dissolving, and then a kind of something very new emerged that brought forth a new body of teachings and practice that is really all about opening into direct experience of the sacred, which is what I call grace. The not talking about grace or God, but actually directly experiencing our divine true nature, what really is underneath all the dust of our ego and our self-image and our trying to be spiritual. And so the methodology for how we get to access the grace of our true nature and the exponential possibilities beyond ego is not through trying to kill off our ego or judge ourselves for the fact that we have one, but learning to understand and let ego relax. So it's a very beautiful way to let authentic spiritual surrender take place by learning to get out of the way.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really lovely. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot of nuance to it. And so I lead a Sangha with advanced students ongoingly and retreats that anyone can join online or in person, and various other things I get up to as well. But essentially, it's all about relaxing back into that which is who we truly are and what we've always really been, and also exploring and how do we embody the grace of truth, of our true nature in these absolutely enormous times.
Yeah. Well, that's what you and I were talking about before we got on here for our recording, and what I would love to spend some time, just dialoguing with you about today. We are living in enormous times. I like the way you phrased that. You didn't call it, difficult times or challenging times or tragic times. You called it enormous times. We're living in enormous times. And it certainly feels that way. And that also, when you call it enormous times, it also gives me a sense of expansion and possibility.
Yeah,
I think that's
it could be.
Yeah, right? It could be. We're hoping that's where we're going. But let's go there, Miranda. Dive in wherever you'd like, this notion of ego relaxation. But let's first talk about what are these times? And what do we do in the face of it? So pick up wherever you'd like there.
Yeah, well, I think, I've been saying to all of my ongoing students, using a lot of adjectives, these are enormous times. These are intense times. And I noticed I started using those kinds of words, before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
Right? Because I could feel it then. And actually, I was receiving guidance back in 2013 is when I got the guidance started to come, that I needed to bring forth teachings and practices to help as many people as possible become like beautiful, big, old trees with deep and broad roots into the ground of unchanging reality, right? So that they could become more stable in spiritual maturity, and like a big old tree does, becomes then shelter for others. And I was getting guidance that something big was coming and that people were going to get very freaked out. And here's what I know is that when egos feel an existential threat, and let's face it, no matter where you live in the world, I think we all feel there are existential issues that don't have easy answers. Climate change, conflicts in the world that make places unlivable for large swaths of people, that mean large swaths of people have to find somewhere else to live, that triggers amygdala responses when we feel life is changing, our land, our culture is changing, and there are these other people who are very different. It's very activating for our kind of instinctual brain, and for some people more than others. But it triggers survival instinct issues. Add the pandemic into that. This thing we couldn't see that could kill us, right, that we could catch from anywhere. I mean, that is just like throwing steroids onto the whole kind of instinctual, subconscious, primitive part of us. And then, I mean, I remember how it was when the pandemic first hit. And something in my heart felt a sense of, well, felt a lot of things. Sure, we all did. Obviously, compassion and empathy for how awful and heartbreaking it must have been for all those people who could not be with their loved ones, who were sick and dying in intensive care units, and the anxiety and the fear, and how it was for parents with young children living in a small apartment. I mean, elderly people, people who were single, who had to be isolated, and the depression, the mental health issues so there's so many things that we have all been just dealing with, and it's been bang, 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 one after another. And then, but at the same time, I felt hope at the time when it first hit, because I thought, wow, here we are, everyone on the planet in the same situation, dealing with the same challenge. And guess what? The one solution is to cooperate. Mm-hmm. And I felt a sense of, well, maybe this is going to be the ignition that we need. Because from my perspective, what is absolutely what's needed on planet Earth is for us to move beyond our self-centeredness, which is what ego is. Ego is about me and my, and you and yours, right? But our higher nature doesn't operate like that. Our higher nature understands, knows that we are interconnected, that your well-being is not separate from my well-being, and at the deepest level, you are me. Like we are being lived and breathed by the same mystery, and that all life systems are interdependent. And wow, how amazing that is.
There is no private good.
Right. And that even not just with people, but that we are being co-regulated by the plant kingdom. Mm-hmm. That, the plant kingdom is compassionately sucking in our carbon dioxide and transmuting that into life-giving oxygen. Like, how amazing is that? And that's the natural system of life, right? That's how it is. But the problem spiritually, all of the great traditions agree, is that we've gotten separated from the truth of reality, from the interconnectedness, that allows us to be completely unique, but what is living and breathing us is the same animating force, one way of looking at it.
Yeah, of course.
So I thought, I had hope at first that this could be the ignition that we need to rise, and what happened was the opposite. And so that affected me deeply, and I took it deeply into my own spiritual practice. And since then, I've been doing my best to bring forth teachings and practice that help us address the issues, the fear, the mistrust, the difficulty with allowing for more than one position or opinion, and the tendency we have to lock down into this is the only right position or way to look at things. Anyway, so recently I've been giving teachings on, cultivating equanimity, and teachings on how do we be peaceful and potent at the same time? Like, what does it mean to wake up spiritually and to show up in our world, embodying our love and care in actions that serve?
Yeah. Well, let's go there a little bit. Let's talk a bit about how to cultivate equanimity. It's one of my favorite words, by the way. I'm glad that you brought it onto the show. How do we remain peaceful and potent at the same time? I mean, I think those are huge questions.
Yeah, and way more than we could possibly do justice with in a 30-minute conversation. But, what I would say is that if we look at spiritual awakening frameworks across the wisdom traditions, you'll start to notice after a while there seem to be two primary frameworks for how we wake up spiritually. One of them is a more transcendent approach, where the emphasis is on, in a way, like zooming out, big picture, transcending so that we can rest in awareness, right? And be less attached to this and that happens. And that is helpful. And so classical practices like certain kinds of meditation and prayer can be very helpful in helping us to open up into that depth of consciousness where we are more than the content of our emotions and our thoughts and our experiences. And we've seen many examples throughout human history with some of the greatest luminaries who have somehow been able to find this capacity, like Nelson Mandela, being able to emerge from this truly unjust, awful situation without a hard, hateful heart, right? We've seen Gandhi, we've seen examples where this is possible. And in all of these examples, we see that there was some kind of spiritual practice they engaged in that helped them go big picture and to open to what the Buddhists call the natural great peace, or what Christians would call the peace that surpasses all understanding, that is not dependent on what happens. And so, that's part of it. But that's only one awakening framework. The trap in that awakening framework is bypassing.
Yeah.
And I hear and see a lot of people these days on a spiritual path just saying, oh, it's all toxic. I don't pay attention to the news, or it's all the same, it's so crazy. And so they're not actually watching and seeing what's going on. And then, of course, that disables you from the possibility of taking appropriate, noble action when action is required. It's a checking out in the name of awakening.
Right.
But the other awakening paradigm has a different focus and emphasis, and it's more an in and through approach. And so we see that, in Kashmiri Shaivism, where you go towards your fears and your worries to see, okay, what is this really about? What is at the core of this? What is holding it together? Who am I in this anxiety? Often we have a layer of history that, has been activated, and we're caught in it. And that is blocking the possibility of moving through that fear and being able to discriminate what is an authentic threat to my well-being and what is just the mind stream, a little somebody who's just caught in an anxiety. And so that empowers us to be able to mature, by moving through and harnessing the energy within our difficult emotions and reactions to grow and become deeper and wiser and more substantial people. And ironically, what most people don't know is that in the immanent approach, the energy that's often bound up in our ego defenses and history and misunderstanding and projection actually gets liberated, and then it propels us into a deeper embodiment of grace. And so that's the zooming in and through, immanent, zooming back out and wide, big picture, resting in awareness, and then immanent in and through to really get to the core of things. We need both. And so for me, equanimity comes when we can know when we need to do this and know when we need to do that, and not either or, but learn to both and. Right? And so you remember that our deepest nature is not our opinions or our political affiliation or even our gender. Even though we have a gender, we have an affiliation, we have our views, that's fine. But at the same time, we must honor our human experience and not misuse spiritual teachings to bypass
Yeah. I say to people, just like you have a right hand, but you're not your right hand.
Great one. Yeah.
Yeah, if I lose my right hand, I'm still here. That is true also of your opinions, your beliefs,
Right.
your overall perceptions, your personality. You
Yeah.
have one. You have beliefs. You have perceptions. Hopefully, in an unconscious world, your perceptions have you.
Yes.
Your beliefs have you, and we're seeing that. We're seeing the cost of that unconsciousness of.
Well, yeah, I think it's just what you say is lovely about I have a right hand, but I'm not my right hand. But yes, it's when we become completely, our whole identity gets subsumed in our point of view, in our position. I think that's what's kind of dangerous. And we're seeing a lot of that happening right now.
That is the mechanistic nature of the ego.
Yes.
To take over and to claim dominion. I teach my students, I encourage them to not even use the phrase my ego, but to use the phrase the ego.
Yeah.
It gives it some distance. And it also speaks to the universal nature of the ego. Human beings have a psychological structure that is designed for us to survive, psychologically and physically. That's the ego. It's part of what we all have.
Right.
And the more that you can separate and just see like, there it is again.
Yeah.
There it is.
Well, I call it discriminate because it's in a way a more accurate term to bring in the East that is called viveka. It's a very important quality that we need to cultivate. And I think that's really crucial in this time where, we're bombarded with AI and, manipulation in various forms of communication. So we need to actually pay more close attention is how can I discriminate what is real from what is fake or has manipulation in it in myself and as I navigate these times. And so one of the things that I always say to my students is, yes, it's really intense and huge, but I think we have a moral responsibility to keep our eyes open and pay attention because we've seen throughout human history what happens when people don't do that, and they're not empowered with enough factual information to be able to take appropriate actions in service of what they love and who they love. So, but it's hard, for anyone who has a caring heart. And I would imagine there's no one listening here that doesn't have a caring heart because you wouldn't be on a spiritual path. You wouldn't be interested in this podcast if you didn't have a caring heart. So, how do we take in the news in a way that is wise and productive and, that doesn't just traumatize us? Mm-hmm. So I just want to share something that I've been playing with. And the first thing is to think carefully, what is the best source for me to take in my information? I think that's where we need the discrimination to even ask that question and use our critical thinking and our intelligence to be as objective as we can, knowing that nothing is completely objective, but what feels like it's reasonably unbiased. It's trying to give us the truth. So I think you need to look at, who funds what, what their positions are. That's an important discrimination. As is it better for me to be able to stay present by reading or by watching or listening? And I think it's good just to be honest about what is better for us, what helps me digest the information. For me, I think because I had a TV background, I actually was trained originally as a TV presenter. I read the news very briefly in my early career.
Nice. You have a beautiful TV face, actually.
Well, I don't know about that, but Anyway, so for me, that's what's natural. And so I've figured out what for me feels like the best source. But how I do it is I set myself up before I turn it on. So I know that I am going to hear and see things that really are very difficult and painful, that represent some of the worst that humanity is capable of. I know I'm going to hear that. So I ground myself. I sense my body. I feel the holding of the couch that I'm sitting on, the ground under my feet. I take in the life-giving oxygen that arrives with every breath. I might put my hands on my belly or my heart if that feels right. I just consciously set myself up. I turn it on consciously, and I do my best to just stay in touch with my experience as I'm listening, and to discipline myself to take in what I'm receiving, and to remember that this is humanity's prayer list for today.
That's a beautiful way of saying it.
This is humans. It's not them and me. It's our suffering. It's our ignorance. It's our grappling with how to be with difference, how to navigate things that scare us. It's ours. So I pay attention to when I reach my thresholds, and I do, like everybody, I get to this place sometimes where I feel like, I might feel helpless or frustrated or powerless or irritated or exhausted, right?
All of the above.
All of the above. And those things need to be acknowledged and named, right? But when I start to get to the point where I can't stay present anymore because I'm starting to, then I know it's time to just, turn it off or step away, and just to come back to sensing and feeling and breathing and acknowledging my experience and praying for the human family. And I pray a metta prayer that actually anyone can go to my website and get a download of if they join up for my newsletter. And it's a musical version. I sing, "May all beings dwell in the heart. May all beings dwell in the heart. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be healed. May all beings know their wholeness. May all beings be happy and at peace." I sing that for all of us, including myself. And then after I just settle, I then just pop a prayer in. Is there one small thing I can do that helps? And I just listen. And it's interesting what comes. Sometimes there's creative things that have popped out that I've taken action on in service of my deepest values. And sometimes someone pops into my mind and I know they're really struggling, or they're finding it hard too. And so I'll just send them a text, or, ask them how they're doing, or send them an email. So, yeah, it's not just doing the process. It's then, okay, what is one action that I can take?
Yeah. That's the next thing I wanted to talk about. And I really do appreciate the notion of how to take care of yourself to remain peaceful and potent. And as you remain potent, one of the things I think a lot of people are struggling with is because this onslaught of change and unprecedented occurrences particularly in the United States right now, it's so rapid. People are struggling with what to do.
Yeah.
It may feel extreme to liken what we're going through to Germany in the late 30s.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I was giving it some grace. I don't think so either. So, a lot of people in my programs, in my classes, and my friends, we talk about, I don't want to be a bystander, and yet what can I do? So let's talk about this sense of, okay, I'm peaceful. I'm managing my nervous system. I'm regulating my emotions. I'm breathing. I'm grounding. I'm present. And I'm taking care of myself. And you know what? There's still stuff I got to do because be with what's happening to my neighbors and to my communities and to our democracy. I can't be with it.
Right.
So let's talk about that, about discernment of right action.
Yeah. Well, I think, two things, the feelings of helplessness, powerlessness, many of us are feeling that right now, and it's good to acknowledge those feelings, but to also understand that they're coming from our ego, because our true nature is not powerless.
Right.
Our true nature is so many qualities, is love and peace and presence and power, the power of being, right? Yeah. And so one of the qualities that we want to understand about the power of being is that it's not a divided power. It's not a power over. It's a power that comes out of unity. And so there's a clue in that it has to do with joining together with other people who care too, and doing some research on what initiatives already exist that you could participate in or be part of. And, to then pay attention to, in your joining with other people that share your values and that care too, can you show up in those spaces not from anger, not from hate, but out of your love and your care for, others and the greater whole and the next generations and so forth. And that's the discipline, is to move into action without dividing, right? To take a stand for your deepest values that aren't fueled by hatred, right? That don't dehumanize, even though we may feel the need to stand up to destructiveness. And what most people that I see need help with really understanding is that standing up to destructiveness in ourself, in our interpersonal relationships, and in our world is a very deep embodiment of love. Love, like, for example, a mother walks into the kitchen and all the little kids have taken out the kitchen knives and the cuisine arts and they're playing with them and they're cutting themselves and they're bleeding and they're playing as if these things are a game, and they're not. And so any good parent is not just going to say, "Oh, sweetie, stop doing that." Any good parent is going to just take action and, take those implements off the children that do not understand. These are not things to be played with. And, has to do that in a skillful way that doesn't get cut themselves, but that gets the job done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this shows us that powerful action is not separate from love. It's part of the same depth of being. And so I think we want to stay close to that, even as we may feel inspired to go to a protest or write to a senator or take, one of these actions led by an initiative that expresses our values, that may need to speak up while we still can.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads to this next notion that I want to dive into with you more. You've coined this phrase, ego relaxation. I could not love that more, by the way. It's a beautiful phrase. Do you mind telling us a bit about it, what it entails, and how it applies to what these
people love the concept of it.
It's fantastic.
But it's both a transmission of how it is when ego is relaxed. So when our ego recognizes it's not the doer, we can't get to peace. It's not, ego has to get out of the way. And so when we take in the transmission that I received back in 2005 in Ramana Maharshi's cave, to be nothing, do nothing, get nothing, become nothing, seek for nothing, relinquish nothing, be as you are, rest in God.
Mm.
When we just receive that, notice how you feel. You just went,
Mm.
So your whole system received the transmission, and it brings about a relaxation into reality, into your home, where you are within and part of the reality we might call God, where peace is infinite.
Mm.
But it's also a practice. So ego is always picking up the reins of control. Ego is running off a misunderstanding that we are separate and that we have to somehow figure things out and fix it and navigate everything ourselves.
And it's going to be hard.
But we feel we can't.
Right.
So that, by definition, equals stress. So what ego then does is try harder, but it's trying harder with a misunderstanding of reality, using mechanisms that were laid down between the ages of 0 and 5, which were clunky at best, were always only workarounds, with the fundamental untruth at the core of them, which is that you're separate and that all the love and the support you could possibly need isn't available to you. And so inevitably, it's anything that you do from identifying with that fundamental construct of separation is going to be clunky and stressful. And so when you understand, okay, we're talking about judgment, the belief I'm separate, the feeling of I need to control everything, that I'm in charge of everything, that I have to make it happen, all of that is just like overdeveloped muscles based on nothing. So we need to just, see that. And just like in Shavasana at the end of a yoga class, we bring our awareness to that tense part and we don't push it away, because you can't just push away tension or contraction, but we bring loving awareness to it to see it and understand it for what it is. And then you see if it can give.
Mm.
And just like we've all had that experience at the end of a yoga class, you can learn that.
Yeah.
You can learn to spot your judgments and go, what if I relax my attachment to that?
Yeah.
You can see your fear and understand it. And what if I don't make that mean? It's just,
Right.
What if you see your belief in separation? Okay. What if you notice the grip of control and the belief I have to do this? What if we just see it and understand it? And okay. What if we learn to, notice that bad radio station in your mind that sounds like your mother or your school teacher on a really bad day, that's really only telling you you're getting it wrong and you need to try harder and you're not good enough? What if we could just notice that and shift our allegiance, stop being so loyal to that?
Right.
It's all very possible. So this is ego relaxation.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds brilliant. I just had a class last week where I used the phrase perception as sacred practice. And using your perception, recognizing that how you choose to perceive, like you were just saying, what if I don't see it that way? What if I don't harbor that thought? Or what if I don't empower that belief? And using your perception like a prayer, that you're always praying. There's a Bible verse that says, pray without ceasing. And I've always wondered, what does that mean? What does that look like? And as I dwell on it more and more, I think it's exactly what you're alluding to with this practice of ego relaxation, of really just stepping back and watching what the ego is doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's both. It's the stepping back and it's also the stepping in and through. And so ego relaxation includes that, seeing it and then learning to stay present, actually to deepen in your presence and just open through those places. And so you let grace or the presence move through, and actually it's not just mindfulness. Something happens. Grace arrives, and what was an obstacle or a block actually becomes a gate. It's very surprising, and you can't conceptualize it. You can't know it until you experience it. So the learning to relax out of fear, judgment, control, habit, attachment, all these things, and then learning to relax into deeper dimensions of being and softening, opening, allowing experience to unfold, getting out of our own way, letting grace take over.
It's so beautiful. I love the way you use the teaching of grace. There's not a lot of teachers that use that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Or they use it in a way that is superficial. I really made a big study of grace. And I've found that, most people, when they hear that word, they hear, oh, that's lovely. That feels nice. It's a concept of, of mercy in a way. But grace is really, the direct experience of the divine presence. And it has dimension to it. It's the very ground of our being. Life is grace. The fact that we're all here, the fact that anything is like, what? How? It's so profound and intelligent. Like you and I and everyone was birthed into being, like propelled out of our mother's womb by a force, a divine mystery that is doing everything. Whoa. WTF.
Right? It's so profound.
Right. It's also the blessings. We've all had experiences where we have felt the hand of grace in synchronicities and miracles where somehow, like, we were just going about our business and we met the love of our life. And we could not have planned that if we tried. Or, we all know what that is. Or to feel that, we were miraculously on the freeway and almost like had the most awful crash and we were shepherded out of harm's way. You could feel something protected you. It's the blessings of grace. And grace is also the power that transforms your suffering into wisdom through these ancient time-tested spiritual technologies like forgiveness and, compassion and, all of these things that help us discriminate and see through our identities and open into boundless depths of being. And of course, grace is about being graceful, like becoming more graceful human beings in all the nooks and crannies of daily life, which is an ongoing practice for all of us, isn't it?
Graceful and gracious.
Yes.
I would also add that to it. Being gracious.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that I can allow for other people, that I don't have to be right, that I don't need you to be right. I can just behold you with a sense of love and wonder and awe. Let things go, There was a big kerfuffle at my church this week, and people, a lot of people got very upset, and I got a lot of phone calls about what we should do, and I certainly heard it all and appreciate the merits of what people are seeing, and I just felt like, can we just bring some grace to this, some graciousness? Mistakes were made, things were done and said that shouldn't have been done and said. Yes, there needs to be some repair and some amends. It's so interesting. Being a human being, I think, is just like, of all of creation, right? Think about an oak tree. Think about a dolphin. Think about a cat. I don't know. Their existence seems so just filled with ease and beauty and simplicity. And then there's human beings.
Yeah. Well, I think on an evolutionary scale, as far as we know, dogs and cats and dolphins don't have a personality structure.
As far as we know, right?
As far as we know, we might be wrong, but it appears that way.
Yeah.
And of course, we human beings do,
Yeah.
And that makes us a lot more complicated and tricky. Beautiful, but
Yeah.
tricky sometimes.
Exactly. They have characteristics. As
They
a dog cat owner, they have, I would say they have a personality, but they don't have an ego structure.
Yeah.
They don't have an ego. My dog definitely has a personality, versus like a little yippy dog that barks at everything and is, always protecting. And mine is just kind of like loving and laid back and let me lay on you. And so might be personality there, but there's not ego.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what human beings have to grapple with. And I think most people don't fully appreciate the gravity and the density of the human ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, though, there's no being here in human form without having one. And
right. Exactly.
So that's why coming
That's
back to
the
ego relaxation, because I think the mistake many people have made that has been propagated, I think, by spiritual teachings that I don't think have been as nuanced as they could be, that there's no being human without developing an ego structure.
Yeah.
And so the goal is not to stamp out your ego structure or not become a depersonalized nobody.
Right.
The goal is to let your ego relax. And so, your personality becomes more transparent and open to your true nature. And so it serves when that's needed. Without an ego structure, it would be hard for us to have a conversation or be able to relate or do things in the world. So,
that's what I mean by gracious. That's exactly what I mean by gracious. Letting the ego simply relax.
Yeah.
Letting it.
And so that involves, understanding, okay, we're all in learning curves. Sometimes we don't intend to impact one another negatively, but we do.
Yes.
And it happens. So excuse my French, when shit happens in our interpersonal being, can we look at that with compassion and with curiosity to see what was going on there that I didn't consciously intend for someone to feel hurt or judged by me, but they're telling me they did. So was there something I wasn't seeing, or would it have happened anyway that it just hit on a wound in them? If so, either way, what can I learn now? Yes. Like, what's possible now that allows for healing?
That's really the root of conscious evolution. To just
totally
bring back to
we have to be okay. We have to accept our own humanity and learn not to judge ourselves when things appear to go wrong, but be curious to understand more and know. It is also about humility too, one of these time-tested, crucial virtues of any spiritual path, to know that, in our human complexity, we have a subconscious and unconscious, and sometimes stuff comes out of us sideways that we ourselves are not aware of. And so to integrate and include the possibility that we might not see certain things about ourselves that might be good for us to see, and that we need compassion and mercy in order to face the truth of these things, so that we can learn, well, maybe there's a better way of doing that, or maybe there's a hardness in me that is really coming from something I haven't yet integrated from my past. It might be good for us to integrate it. And I think, coming back to our times, I think we all need to get better at acknowledging and processing our fears of difference. We all need to learn how to work through our resistance to change, to acknowledge we might have feelings, we might not like change. Egos don't like change, right? And so they get very reactive when change. It's very, very threatening. Yeah, it triggers threat. And I think that's some of the driving forces of the really tough stuff we're seeing. And yet, change is not going to not happen. It's part of life. And there will be more changes because of climate change and because of the wars and there's no cutting that any other way. So how can we get better at navigating change with grace and being
Mm.
open to constructive change when that's what's asked of us personally, when that's what's asked of us interpersonally.
Mhm.
You know, anyone in a real marriage will have a moment where our loved one kind of lets us know that our way of being is not having a beautiful impact on them.
Yeah.
And they may request, and rightly so, that we work on something. And that is part of being real.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not be easy for us, but if we care, we will do our best to be open to their request and just see what's true and be willing to take a look.
I love what you just said. I think that's your next book title, Navigating Change with Grace.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't that be a lovely piece of work for you to
Yeah, it would. I mean, embodying grace in
Embody.
challenging times is what I'm working on, but
exactly. That's it. Navigating.
or wake up and love. I don't know. I'm definitely working on. I've got so much material. There's probably about 4 books there.
Yeah, I'm sure, Miranda.
It's the time to write those.
It is. I hear you. It's really, you have so much depth of wisdom. You said that earlier, that this is a time that calls for wisdom. And I've been teaching that as well, that, now with the advent of AI, we're in a post-knowledge era. Knowledge is no longer a thing. We are in a post-knowledge world because you can find out anything in a second with AI. Like, you can find out any knowledge, any content that you want, but the capacity to integrate and embody knowledge is wisdom.
That's right.
And AI can't do that for you.
Exactly, because it's not a human being. So it can
doesn't have a consciousness.
It can synthesize all the information that exists, but that's not the same as wisdom.
That's right.
And that's not the same as applying that wisdom to your life situations.
Yeah. So
that's what it's about.
Yeah. We are in a post-knowledge era, which calls for the advent of this being the era of wisdom.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's my next book title.
Good for you. Yeah.
No, I've got a few others also that I'm working on. Living in the Domain of Miracles is one of them. Right. I could spend the whole afternoon talking with you. It's really a blessing to bring your depth of grace and knowledge and wisdom to this show. I know people are going to want to find you, be in touch with you. What are the best places for people to connect with you and hear about your programs, your work?
Best that they go to my website, which is mirandamacpherson.com, MirandaMacpherson.com.
Yeah, we'll have that in the show notes.
And then, buy my book, The Way of Grace, Transforming Power of It. And the people will probably love the Cultivating Grace card deck.
That's on my table next to my quiet time chair.
Yeah, but there's no excuse. Anyone can pick a card a day and do the practice on the card. It takes 5 minutes. So there's no excuse anymore.
Yeah, right. You made it simple.
But people, when you go to my website, there's so much downloadable resource there. There's the Living Grace audio program. So that's where people can, receive my latest teachings that are very much oriented to these times that we're in together. They're really depthful teachings, and I would never do anyone the disservice of giving a teaching without giving them a practice.
Yes. Good. Love that. Practical.
Yeah.
Well, Miranda, thank you so much for your generosity.
Pleasure.
Time and your sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's really lovely to be with you, and I look forward to upcoming things. We've coming out together, the Frequency of Miracles. So we'll do another show maybe where we can talk more about that. And I really do look forward to introducing you to my community, and it's just so great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for all you do, and thank you everyone for listening.